anyone who's willing to like risk their life to make money to do something illegal, especially if it's something that kind of scares them, it's like,
How do they get it out of there? Because they're cooking it in Canada, but now they're putting it all over the United States,
yeah, people drive it across the border.
right across the Canadian-U.S. border.
Yeah, and there's like Canadian people who are doing it.
Oh, actual Canadians.
Yeah, like the mules are like it'll be like a housewife. Well, not a maybe like yeah, just like a regular schmegular person who's getting a pretty good cut from it.
Have you talked to any sources that have done that?
No, and like the mules are the hard ones for me to talk to, I find, because those people are really just doing it for the money, and you're crossing the border on a regular basis. You don't want to screw up your whatever rapport you've built with this XY border agent or the way that you do it.
Rapport you built with border agents?
It happens. There are people
You can control what border agent you go by. I'm really naive on this, obviously.
for sure. Yeah. Okay. There are people you have to understand too. Like Vancouver borders with Washington, right? So there are people who live in Vancouver and work across the border or vice versa. I literally worked with someone like that. So it's really common for people to constantly be crossing. And like then you'll kind of you get to know them. Or a lot of Canadians we can't order everything on Amazon or whatever to Canada. So like a lot of people have PO boxes over there. So there's people regularly crossing, and there's a lot of people that just generally look inconspicuous and they're doing it for extra money. Now this is what I was told by the guys that I went with. And I asked, of course, I'm like, okay, well, put me in touch with a mule, right? But those people won't talk, and those people are Canadian.
Yeah.
And those people typically have a lot more to lose. It's like they're doing it because like they have kids or like they have something going on.
But they're taking fentanyl. Like that's what I'm saying. Like, okay, you have kids, you got to make money. There's a lot of ways to make money in this world. You're taking a drug that on air contact can kill other kids and is killing millions of people every year right now.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's right.
Yeah, no, I know you're not.
But I'm also not saying it's wrong. I mean, because everyone, at the end of the day, a lot of people want to get rich, and they want to get rich quick, or they need money and they need it quick. And fast money usually isn't legal money. I mean, we see it all the time.
Yeah, but like I'm always strapped for cash around here. I don't go selling fucking coke at night. You know what I mean?
I know.
Like there is I mean, maybe I should. Like there is a right or wrong. I don't, because I'm like, why would I do that? You know, it's not even, you understand? Like it's not even a moral thought to me. I'm not in college anymore.
Yeah. I mean, I think sometimes you also have to like really put yourself in these people's shoes. And I'm not like defending or whatever, but there's a lot of people I met who like they were strapped and they really needed it, and they didn't really have the means to make it another way. And I'm not saying it's right, but I also like don't get into like a moral high ground about this.
I actually understand that.
There's a lot of people, it's like, yeah, I don't know what the fuck I would do in your position.
I don't know if you could do your job as effectively as you do if you didn't remove a significant amount of morality from what you do.
Yeah.
And that's in your defense. Like I think you kind of have to.
It's like like we were talking about Tijuana, right?
Off camera.
Camera, yeah. Because they asked me, is Tijuana safe? And a side note from that is like, you go to Tijuana, there's a lot of working girls there, right? Like sex workers.
Yes.
And we all know like sex work, oldest profession, fast money, not easy money. I talk about this all the time.
Yeah.
Because so many people are like, that's fucking disgusting. I could never do that. Or like, how terrible. Well, first of all, a lot of them are trafficked. But second of all, you get to talking to some of them. Like if you really talk to them, like it's not just like, you want a drink? Come sit at my table, shake your ass. No. Yeah. It's like, what brought you here? How is it that you're younger than me? Like you're 20 years old. You have 2 kids in this small town in Michoacan. So you came here and you're sending your money back. And now you're doing meth because you have to keep a certain weight to work at these clubs and because you have to stay awake all the time. And you're literally giving full service sex for like $100. That's crazy. And then there's people saying, when like those girls get murdered or those girls overdose, people saying, well, I mean, it's wrong. And, well, they should have known better. Like, there was no possible way that they could have known better or perhaps done anything else, unfortunately.
Yeah. I think that's, I asked you about the mule one because it's so overt, like what you're driving across and what you're dumping.
Right.
But when it comes to, say the more, like you're talking about, more traditional where people will go for fast money for crime, I get it sometimes based on the environment. I do understand that. Like, let's call it what it is. I do understand the dude who well, now it's like not, it's like pretty much legal, but the dude who sells like a lot of weed to put himself by, that's fine to me. Like, I don't really care, but that's faster money, right? Like, that's illegal in a lot of places still.
But like weed wasn't killing people the way
That's
fentanyl
right.
kills people.
That's
Sex work
exactly-
isn't killing people, and I understand
That's
that.
right.
But I think that at the end of the day, anyone who's willing to like risk their life to make money to do something illegal, especially if it's something that kind of scares them, it's like, what has brought you to this level of
Yes.
desperation? And I can't judge that.
Yeah.
I've never been in
yeah.
that position, thankfully, and hopefully never will.
Yeah, my buddy Matt Cox, who's been on this show a bunch, he is reformed, but he was the greatest fraudster of all time.
Yeah.
For about 6 years, including like a long run from the FBI. The guy was a savant of a mortgage fraudster and identity thief. Ended up doing 13 and a half in prison. Content guy now, great dude. But, he always talks about the threshold for crime.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, everyone, including the most moral person down to Mother Teresa, has a threshold for crime. He said,
God.
and he said,
Mother Teresa.
And he said, what I mean by that is, there is, you may be a mother and your infant's starving, you're going to go steal some bread. He's like, I would even argue that's okay, right? But that's a crime. What he realized is that his threshold is really low. And I think that when it comes to the scale of crime you do, and you got to take in all the factors here: environment, financial situation, economic, I mean, like the general economic situation in your environment around you, all that stuff. Like, there is a threshold there. And the person that is going to drive fentanyl across a border, their threshold to do crazy shit is lower than a person who maybe is really on hard times as a single mother and, goes into sex work.
Mm-hmm.
It's a different level.
Mm-hmm. It is. But it's interesting that you bring that, steal the bread for the starving kid thing, because I kind of see it all as the same, because it's like, well, fuck, you can only steal so much bread before you need to put the kid through school, before you need to, have a
Right.
car to drive the kid to school, before you need to pay the electricity to keep the heat on. So you stealing bread is not gonna give you money, right? It's just gonna give you that bread. So then, I can just make a trip across the border, carry this stuff, I never have to see it again. I go back, I get cash in my pocket. It's a done deal, right?
Yeah.
Are you thinking about all the hundreds of people that could possibly die from what your action
Yes.
just did, or are you thinking about the problem that's right in front of you
Yeah.
and your personal problem? And it's like what we were talking about. It's like people aren't even concerned with that global problem of like what's going on in Mexico, for example, because they're so hyper focused on what's going on within their own home.
And they don't have to see it. They're just a courier.
Yep.
So they get to be removed from it. There's
Like
something
they're
to be
not
said
even a
for that.
dealer. Like
Yeah.
dealers are seeing their clients die.
Yeah.
Dealers are seeing their clients deteriorate.
Yeah. I mean, that kind of reminds me, like, it wasn't fentanyl, but that reminds me of Luis a little bit too. Luis Navia. Because he, we had this guy in here who, Luis Navia, was in the cartels for 25 years. And the last 15 to 20 of those years, he was like the guy globally for smuggling the drugs. He never sold it. He never had the guys on the street. That wasn't his job. His job was to get, as he would call it, product from point A to point B.
Yeah.
And I call him, like, he's a friend, really fascinating dude, but he's like the most amoral guy I've ever met in my life. It's not like, I think you kind of have to know them. I don't know how much people got from those podcasts, just seeing them on camera, but when you really talk with them, it's not like wrong, but it's not like right to him. It just is.
It just is.
It just is.
And I can understand how people view it like that.
I can too. It doesn't make it any easier for an emotional person like me to grapple with that though.
Totally.
And also, like, listen, I have the luxury of having not grown up in astute poverty, or whatever the term is, like total poverty.
Yeah.
You know, or where everyone around me is getting shot. And frankly, most of the people listening right now can say the same thing. So it's hard. Like, I always say this, when you use the phrase, if I were blank, then I would blank, that is a very dangerous thing to say because you don't fucking know.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you think, you might be 99% sure you would do this thing, but you're not 100. You don't know for sure until you're in that situation. It's facing you and you
100%.
react.
Yeah, and like so many people find themselves in situations where it's so completely out of their control. And also, like, I don't know if you've ever felt like this when you're just in a really high stress situation and you need to find the solution. Sometimes your brain, it just like it switches. Like it's not the regular you brain.
Yes.
Right? And you're going for that solution, and some people will kill for that fucking solution. It's just it kind of is how a lot of people operate. And if you are growing up seeing trappers and scammers and and they're balling out, why would you not do the same? I was actually literally just having this conversation of how so many guys who are kind of starting, like the juniors, like in the cartel, like they kind of want to get involved. It's not like how it was a decade ago even, where back then, like, we had this idea that, like, well, you grew up poor, you saw your older cousin trapping, so then you got in and he got you the connect, and now you're kind of in the cartel, or you're a lookout. Now it's like guys or people who actually grew up pretty privileged, they have money, but they like the idea of that, and like they listen to that music, they've seen those shows, and they want to get into that glamorized lifestyle, and it's changing, and that is very different than someone who's just like, I need that quick money, I need to find that solution.
Absolutely.
And that's like more like sociopath. Like those are people who like probably have disorders, because how are you willingly getting yourself into a situation where you could be responsible for deaths or violence when you don't even really need to be there in the fucking first place.
Yeah. When I was telling you before camera, I had the swim team in, the drivers in New York, and like they don't commit any other crimes rather than just driving fast.
Mm-hmm.
But they're driving fucking 160, 180 in the New York City area, and I will say they're extremely skilled. They're like the best drivers I've ever seen. But all it takes is one person making an innocent mistake on their end. Someone going 60 doesn't use a blinker, right? Very small mistake that usually wouldn't cause a problem, but they've decided to go 180, so they hit him and kill everybody.
Yeah.
And it's like and to their credit, they were answering the questions about this in here, but I'm like, do you understand why someone like me who doesn't do these things would look at that and say, you have to have some sort of screw loose? And they volunteered it. They're like, there's absolutely, I think Float was saying, like, there should be psychological studies done on this, because there is definitely something in our brains that's wired just a little differently that makes us do this. And what I would say is they're not full-blown sociopaths. I didn't get that.
Right.
But there's enough there of like that some level of narcissism gene that they're like, I can do it.
Yeah, it's some sort of personality disorder or something that's some chemical imbalance it reduces your regard for human life.
Absolutely.
And empathy generally.
Watching the video, guys. If you haven't already subscribed, please smash that subscribe button and check out this clip's full podcast episode by clicking here or in the description below.